Yo, book nerds, I finally finished rereading the Oresteia by Aeschylus. I think in the past I was saying Aeschylus, but that's the way I always heard his name. But now I was told it's pronounced Aeschylus, which makes sense when you think about it. If you know anything about the pronunciation of Greek names, the CH sounds like a K sound, but I had never thought of it before. But anyway, this is a series of 3 plays. The Oresteia is a series of plays. The 3 plays are AGAMEMNON, the Libation Bearers, and the EUMENIDES. I read these for the first time when I was in undergrad. So this was a reread, and it took me way longer to reread them than it should have, let me just say. And that is not because I wasn't enjoying it, it's just because life happened and I couldn't help it. It was what it was, but I'm finally done with it, and here is your review for it. Like I kind of mentioned, Aeschylus was a Greek writer, ancient Greece. So this is a translation. This is translated by Robert Fagles. I don't normally read introductions if they're not by the actual author, but Robert Fagles has a really nice introduction in this book, which I did read, which I recommend to you. It explains a lot of the backstory and a lot of the intricacies of these plays, which I thought was very nice going into them. Some of the backstory that I do think you should have before going into these plays is also in that introduction, and I kind of want to just paraphrase some of it for you because it sets up a lot, and in the play it kind of glosses over it and you might miss it, and it's really important to know these things. These plays follow the house of Atreus, and the house of Atreus is Agamemnon's family and his brother Menelaus. So if you know anything about the Trojan War, Menelaus's wife Helen was taken by Paris to Troy, and it caused the Trojan War. Agamemnon, Menelaus's brother, goes to war with him, fights in the Trojan War, and they win and they come home. Now, here's some setup for you. So, Menelaus is married to Helen. Menelaus's brother is Agamemnon. Agamemnon's wife is Clytemnestra. Clytemnestra and Helen are also sisters. So you've got 2 brothers who have married 2 sisters. Now that's the family, but there's some other family members you need to know. The house of Atreus has been kind of plagued with death and blood for generations. The founder of their line was Tantalus. Tantalus offended the gods by having them feed on his son's flesh, and they condemned him to starve in Hades, being tantalized by food and drink that are always out of reach. Tantalus's son, Pelops, I think is how you say his name, he was restored to life by the gods, and he goes on to have 2 sons named Atreus and Thyestes. If I'm mispronouncing any of these names, I'm sorry. So, Atreus will have his sons Agamemnon and Menelaus, but Atreus is brothers to Thyestes. Thyestes seduced Atreus's wife and contested the throne, and Atreus banished him. But that wasn't enough. He wanted more revenge on Thyestes, so Atreus decides to invite Thyestes over to make amends, but he feeds Thyestes the flesh of his children. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Thyestes finds out. He's horrified, obviously, as anyone would be. And he is then exiled with his only remaining son, Aegisthus. That is important for later. So remember Aegisthus. So again, Atreus had 2 sons, Agamemnon and Menelaus, who are the main characters here. So, lots of bloodlust, lots and lots. Now, when Helen got taken to Troy, Agamemnon wanted to go help his brother get her back. Now, some of the gods were mad at Agamemnon for whatever reason, and it was prophesied that Agamemnon would only be able to go to Troy if he sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia to appease the gods. He sacrifices Iphigenia to the gods. And rightfully, his wife, Clytemnestra, is angry. She is pissed. And Agamemnon goes off to war. They win. They get Helen back and they come home. So there's this question of what bond is stronger. Throughout all of these plays, even before these plays take place, this question comes into play. What bond is stronger? The bond of marriage or the bond of blood? Is the marriage of a man and a woman, of Menelaus to Helen, stronger, more important than the bond of father to daughter, of Agamemnon to Iphigenia? By Agamemnon killing Iphigenia and going off to war, he is saying that the marriage bond is stronger. And Clytemnestra does not agree. And this is the setup for these plays. That is a lot of background information, but you need to know it. If you don't know it, you're not going to get as much out of these plays. When I first read them, I didn't know the background. I didn't know anything really about the Trojan War besides the basics. And I really got a surface level feel for these poems. So I'm really glad that now that I've read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I read the introduction that is included here, I know more. When I went into it, I got a much better picture of what these plays are about. The theme of blood price, man price, eye for an eye also surfaces in these plays. Clytemnestra wants revenge. She wants to kill Agamemnon. She wants to avenge her daughter, eye for an eye. It's this whole curse with this family. People keep taking revenge on each other all the way down the line. And it's just a lot of blood and not a lot of good people in this family. All right, that is the setup. So these plays are about Clytemnestra trying to get revenge on her husband for her daughter's death. And if you don't want to know much more than that, just know that it's a wild ride. It is very entertaining and enjoyable, and these characters are all terrible, and I had a good time reading these plays, so I highly recommend them. I'm going to talk about each of the plays, and I can't do that without spoilers, so spoiler alert. We'll start with Agamemnon, the first of the three plays. Agamemnon starts off with Troy has just been sacked. We just won the war. Clytemnestra is waiting for Agamemnon to get home. There is a chorus in the play that kind of quickly recaps what has happened with Iphigenia and the Trojan War, but it goes really fast. So if you aren't paying attention, you kind of can miss information very easily. But Clytemnestra, she is the queen of slyness. She moves in the shadows. She's the Black Widow. She acts like the perfect wife waiting for her husband to come home, but she's really waiting to strike. There's a lot of imagery with her being compared to a snake, and she's just lying in wait for him. While Agamemnon has been away, Clytemnestra also has kind of formed an alliance with Aegisthus. Remember him? So they are now lovers. So she's cheating on Agamemnon with Aegisthus. Aegisthus also hates Agamemnon because Agamemnon's father fed all of Aegisthus' siblings to Aegisthus' own father. So there's all that Clytemnestra and Aegisthus just hate Agamemnon, and yeah, you're guilty by association in Aegisthus' case, even though Agamemnon didn't do it. His father did, so he's the next best thing, right? And so Clytemnestra wants her revenge too. So they're kind of teaming up, and Agamemnon has no idea. I feel like they are justified in their feelings. I understand where they're coming from. Is it right to murder someone? I still don't agree with that, even if they're terrible and they shouldn't have done what they did. But I get where they're coming from. When you read the Odyssey and they talk about Clytemnestra being this evil person. Homer kind of leaves out all the Iphigenia stuff and the revenge stuff, so you kind of just think she's evil. She cheated on her husband and then she killed him. Like, but there's way more to it. He did some bad stuff to her and she wanted revenge. So it's not black and white. And Aegisthus also wanting revenge, I get it, for his father, but he kind of just leaves Clytemnestra to do the dirty work and then he takes the credit. So I don't really like him no matter which way you look at it. He's kind of, nah, I don't like him. But you have this cycle of death that just keeps going, and Clytemnestra and Aegisthus get caught up in it. There are a ton of quotes in this that I want to just share with you because they are so good. In Agamemnon, around lines 177, it says, Zeus has led us on to know, the helmsman lays it down as law, that we must suffer into truth. It's this idea of purging, that you can suffer and then purify yourself and fix it. And that's kind of like, that's another kind of theme that goes on through this book, is being purged and suffering into truth. Then a few lines later, around line 250, it says, but justice turns the balance scales, sees that we suffer and we learn. So this idea that suffering can teach us things, that bad things help us grow and learn. I like that idea. Like I said, Clytemnestra is the queen of slyness, and she's also the queen of wordplay. She has a lot of great lines in this play. There's a time where she's talking about Agamemnon coming home from the war, and she says, and even if the men come back with no offense to the gods, the avenging dead may never rest. Oh, let no new disaster strike. And it sounds like she's praying for Agamemnon to come home safely, but she's worried that the dead from Troy will come back to haunt him. But she's like, that's what it sounds like on the surface, but in reality, she's saying that if Agamemnon comes back, the avenging dead, Iphigenia, I'm avenging the dead, I'm going to hurt him. It's gonna come back around. Like, that's really what she's saying there. That's around line 349. Around lines 382, it says, bastions of wealth are no defense for the man who treads the grand altar of justice down and out of sight. If you're not a just person, no amount of wealth will save you. I love that idea. Just because you have wealth doesn't mean you're above the law. It doesn't mean things aren't going to come back to haunt you. We also get some extremely gruesome visuals of what war is like, the miseries of war. Around lines 248, it says, whatever miseries break a man, our quota every sun-starved day. Then on the beaches it was worse, dug in under the enemy ramparts, deadly going. Out of the sky, out of the marshy flats, the dews soaked us, turned the ruts we fought from into gullies, made our gear, our scalps crawl with lice, and talk of the cold, the sleet to freeze the gulls, and the big snows come avalanching down from Ida. Oh, but the heat, and the sea, and the windless noons, the swells asleep, drop to a dead calm. But why weep now? It's over for us, over for them. Talking about the hardships, besides just actual fighting, all the hardships of being out in a war, suffering from the weather, the nasty diseases, the lice, gross. It's not a good time. I'm just kind of going in order of how these quotes appear, so I'm jumping around a little from topic to topic, but here's another example of Clytemnestra's wordplay. When Agamemnon shows up, she's talking about a child that should be there. Around lines 864, she says, and so our child is gone, not standing by our side. The bond of our dearest pledge is mine and yours. By all rights, our child should be here. ... Orestes. So she is talking about their son who's away. He's not at home, and she wishes he was there to welcome his father. But she really means Iphigenia should be here, and you killed her. So yeah, she's awesome. I really like Clytemnestra. I'm sorry. I know she's like the bad guy, but I like her. She just says it how it is. There's also a lot of wordplay throughout about sacrifice, Iphigenia was sacrificed, and there's going to be future sacrifices, and that recurs a lot. I found it interesting that there's a line around line 1431. Clytemnestra says, "Done is done," and I always thought that was Shakespeare. What's done is done, Macbeth. But apparently Aeschylus said it first. Done is done. I didn't know that, so I just had to point that out. I like it. That's really all I have to say about Agamemnon. So we'll move on now to the libation bearers. So at the end, again, spoiler alert, at the end of Agamemnon, Clytemnestra succeeds in her revenge and she kills Agamemnon. So now during the libation bearers, we are looking at the next generation. We're looking at Electra and Orestes. Orestes returns. He wants to avenge his father. Electra is his only living sister, and she's mourning her father. Clytemnestra and Aegisthus have seized the throne. They're ruling. Things aren't looking so good for Orestes and Electra. I just find it interesting that Orestes and Electra are mourning for their father when they didn't mourn, or at least that we know of, they didn't mourn for Iphigenia. They care more that their father is dead than the fact that he killed their sister. I also find it interesting that Clytemnestra mourns so much for Iphigenia, but at the same time, she has exiled her son, Orestes, and she's treating Electra like a slave, her other daughter. So, like, make it make sense. You're not treating all your children the same. And she's also kind of chosen her lover over her children. And she didn't choose Agamemnon over her children. She chose Iphigenia over Agamemnon, but now she's choosing Aegisthus over Electra and Orestes. So there's just lots of hypocrisy. Lots of it. It's definitely not black and white. It's very messy. I think the only innocent one is Iphigenia, and she's not even technically in these plays. But anyway, Orestes comes back. He wants revenge, and that's what happens in this play. He goes after Clytemnestra, his mother. There's a quote that I liked in this play as well. Electra and Orestes are kind of calling out to Agamemnon at the grave. This is around lines 486, 87, and it goes beyond. Electra says, "One last cry, father. Look at your nestlings stationed at your tomb. Pity your son and daughter. We are all you have." And then Orestes says, "Never blot out the seed of Pelops here. Then in the face of death you cannot die." Meaning, we love you, father. And if we live on, you live on in us. You live on in your descendants. You can't ever die, really, if you have an heir, if your children have children. Your bloodline goes on, in a sense. So I thought that was interesting. There's another quote that I like around line 740. It's a nurse talking, and she says, she's talking about babies, and she says, "And such care I gave it. Baby can't think for itself, poor creature. You have to nurse it, don't you? Read its mind. Little devil's got no words. It's still swaddled. Maybe it wants a bite or a sip of something, or its bladder pinches. A baby's soft insides have a will of their own. I had to be a prophet." I, as a mom, relate. You don't always know what a baby wants. You have to figure it out. You do have to be a prophet. So that just connected with me. Then the play ends again. Spoiler alert. Orestes gets his revenge. He kills Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. And the chorus kind of foreshadows some stuff here. They say around lines 1014, "No man can go through life and reach the end unharmed. Aye, trouble is now, and trouble still to come." So yeah, nobody gets out of this life unscathed. Orestes definitely been through it. His father's been murdered, his sister's been murdered. Now he had to kill his mom and her lover. He's been through some rough stuff, and it's not over yet. More trouble is to come. And that is what happens in the Eumenides. The Eumenides is all about Orestes and figuring out if he can be purged or not from his crime. His crime is matricide. He killed his mother. And again, that theme of what bond is stronger, the bond of blood from a mother to son or not. Does that matter more than Clytemnestra's bond to her husband? I did find it interesting because this play, the Eumenides, opens with a breaking of the fourth wall, and I just thought that was interesting. Pythia, I think is how you say the name, they address the audience, and it's just interesting. She turns to the audience and says, "Where are the Greeks among you? Draw your lots and enter. It is the custom here. I will tell the future only as the god will lead the way." That's around line 29. So I just thought that was interesting start to this third and final play. The Eumenides is about Orestes and the Furies. The Furies are goddesses. They are older than most goddesses. They are horrible, ugly looking creatures. Both gods and humans are kind of disgusted by their form. They're kind of the outcasts of the world. And when Orestes kills Clytemnestra, the Furies are enraged. It is a crime against nature to kill your mother. And so they are now harassing Orestes, tormenting him, following him around, giving him no peace. Basically, his guilt is eating him alive. We get a description of the Furies that is very visceral, and I wanted to read that to you. That is around lines 70. "They disgust me, these gray ancient children, never touched by god, man, or beast, the eternal virgins, born for destruction only, the entire pit. They range the bowels of earth, the world of death, loathed by men and the gods who hold Olympus." And there's other descriptions about them being like disgusting, and it's just interesting. So they are kind of like the exiles. They're the outcasts. And then Apollo shows up, because Apollo is the one that actually kind of told Orestes, like, you need to go avenge your father. So Orestes thought he'd be in the clear. He had the god's permission to do this. So now Apollo shows up, and he's talking with the Furies. Around lines 200, they have their conversation. And the Furies say, "You commanded the guest to kill his mother," the guest being Orestes. And Apollo says, "Commanded him to avenge his father. What of it?" And then the Furies say, "And then you dared embrace him fresh from bloodshed." And Apollo says, "Yes, I ordered him on to my house for purging." Well, the purging didn't work. And the Furies say, "And we sped him on, and you revile us." Apollo, "Indeed, you are not fit to approach this house." Fury, "And yet we have our mission and our," Apollo, "authority. You sound out your splendid power." So they're arguing, and he's like, what is your mission? And the Furies say, "Matricides. We drive them from their houses." And Apollo says, "And what of the wife who strikes her husband down?" Meaning Clytemnestra killed someone and you didn't get all crazy. And the Furies say, "That murder would not destroy one's flesh and blood, because when you marry someone, they're still not your blood. So killing your own blood is worse." And then Apollo says, "You disgrace the gods because Zeus is married to Hera." And it goes on from there. And so it's interesting. It's that continuation of that argument of which is worse. Then Athena shows up, and she's like, "Let's have a trial." And you get both sides of the story, and she's going to be the judge. And so you go from this blood price, eye for an eye, to democracy. And Aeschylus was living in the time of Athens and democracy, and so he's obviously supporting democracy and moving from barbarism to democracy. They were very proud of their democracy, and so he's showing that through his plays. During the trial, you get more of the argument. The Furies ask Orestes to explain himself and why he killed his mother, and he goes, "She killed her husband, killed my father too." And they say, "But that murder set her free, and you live on for trial," meaning she didn't have the Furies activated while you did. And Orestes goes, "She lived on. You never drove her into exile. Why?" And the Furies say, "The blood of the man she killed was not her own." Orestes, "And I, does mother's blood run in my veins?" Furies, How could she breed you in her body, murderer? Disclaim your mother's blood? She gave you life. So I'm saying, obviously, her blood runs in your veins. She birthed you. So that argument continues. It's just so messy and so interesting. And it definitely sets the stage for needing a trial because both of them have valid points, I guess. And so Athena comes in, she has the trial, she makes her judgment. The end. There's an interesting argument in that trial that Apollo makes about whether it's the mother or the father that creates life. Apollo says, "Here is the truth, I tell you. See how right I am. The woman you call the mother of the child is not the parent, just a nurse to the seed, the new sown seed that grows and swells inside her. The man is the source of life, the one who mounts. She, like a stranger for a stranger, keeps the shoot alive unless God hurts the roots." I just found that interesting as a mom. I just had to share it. I was like, wow. Okay, disagree, but okay. But anyway, we have the trial, and Orestes is found guilty of the charge of matricide, but he is forgiven and cleared. So there's mercy. This justice system has mercy, and it's not just black and white. The Furies don't like the ruling, but then Athena changes them from the Furies to the Eumenides, and they kind of rule beside her to help enforce justice and the laws. And it's all a happy ending. But these are tragedies, so even though Orestes is spared at the end, like almost his entire family is dead. So it's really not a happy ending. Only him and Electra came out alive. But yeah, you kind of see how that wheel has turned. He's still not back up to the top. He's still pretty low. Like, his parents are dead. His sister is dead. Yeah. Again, overall, I enjoyed this reread. I did feel like the end was a little anticlimactic. I get the symbolism going from barbarism to democracy, but it just wasn't very interesting at the end. It dragged and it got a little confusing. Some of that might be the translation, but the ending just dragged a little. But overall, I enjoyed rereading this. Everyone is awful. Everyone except Iphigenia, and she's not even in the story. But again, I feel for Clytemnestra. Just this, I don't like him. But I feel for Clytemnestra. And like I said, Homer doesn't depict her this way. And so it's easy to write her off when you read Homer's poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Like, it's easy to write Clytemnestra off, but Aeschylus paints a much deeper, more complex picture of her situation, and I enjoyed that complexity. There's a definite contrast, though, between Clytemnestra and Penelope. Penelope is Odysseus' wife. She is waiting faithfully for Odysseus to come home, and Clytemnestra is not faithful, and she's waiting like a black widow to strike once Agamemnon gets home. But this overall, like I said, is a familial tragedy. It doesn't end well, even though it technically does, but it's sad. It's just a lot of bloodshed, but it's very wild and entertaining and a good read. Those are all my thoughts. I think I've rambled on long enough. So yeah, it's a very short set of plays, but I had a lot to say. Sorry it took me so long to get this out to you. Let me know your thoughts on the Oresteia in the comments and we can chat. I have moved on to reading the Aeneid by Virgil. I am over halfway already, so this shall be coming soon. It has been an adjustment switching from Greek to Roman. I know they're the same, but the names are different in a lot of cases, but it's been very good so far. So watch for this. That is all I have for you guys today. I hope you have a lovely week, and I will talk to you next Monday. Hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks for talking books with me.